Alright, simplifying variable expressions. Well, a term is a number or a product of numbers, and it can be separated using addition or subtraction. So let's do an example with terms. We could have 5x minus 3 plus 2x minus 8. And this expression contains 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So you can tell that because they're separated by the addition and subtraction signs. So 5x is a term, negative 3 is a term, positive 2x is a term, and negative 8. So we have 4 terms here. So again, a term is either a number or a product of numbers, because 5x means 5 times x. That's represented by a product of numbers. Now, a constant is a term without a variable, without a letter. So in the example above, we'd say negative 3 and negative 8. From above. Just look at negative 8 and look at negative 3. They don't contain a letter after them. They're not multiplied by a variable. So they are called constants. In other words, they don't change. They're constantly that number. A variable can change. Now let's talk about like terms. They have the same last name. So for instance, 5x and 2x, they both have an x for a last name, so they're like terms. Another example here, like terms could be 2x and 5x. Those are like terms. Another example could be negative 6 and 2 are like terms. And now let's go over a non-example. Let's say you had 3x squared and 2x. These do not have the same last name because this last name is x and this last name is x squared, so they're different. So these are going to be not like terms. They are not like terms. So be careful, just because they have an x does not mean you can combine them. Alright, our next term is coefficient, and this is our last vocab word to define. And the prefix co means together. So just think of it as it's being a number that's together with a letter. So it's the number in front of a variable. And for that we can do a couple examples. So coefficient, the number in front of a variable or multiplied by a variable. If we had negative 4x, negative 4 would be my coefficient. But if we had negative x, it's understood there's a 1 in front of that x because 1 times x is just 1. So my coefficient would be negative 1 there. So even if you don't have a number written there, it's understood that it's 1. And remember, we need to always remember PEMDAS. So when simplifying, we want to multiply, which means the distributive property is multiplication. So we want to do that before we add and subtract like terms. And we're going to do a couple of examples with that. So for instance, let's say we had 3 minus 2 parentheses x minus 6. So it would be wrong to say 3 minus 2 is 1 and then x minus 6. That would be wrong. Because we don't subtract first, we multiply first. So this is multiplication, so we do negative 2 times the x, negative 2 times the negative 6. We do that first. So I'm going to bring down my 3, bring that down, and then think negative 2 times x, that's really negative 2x. And then negative 2 times negative 6 is a positive 12. So see, we multiplied first, and now we're going to add and subtract to combine. So my like terms, I'm going to box and circle, so I have 3 and positive 12, and then I'm going to circle a negative 2x. I'll do that in a different color so you can see. So my like terms are 3 and plus 12, and I'm just going to bring down the negative 2x. So it's negative 2x, and 3 plus 12 is positive 15, so I put a plus in front of it, and that would be my answer. All right, let's go ahead and justify what we did. So off to the side, I'm going to put distributive, and I'll just abbreviate. We did distributive property first, and then we combine like terms. All right, let's try another one. Let's do negative 6x plus 3, parentheses 4 minus 2x plus x. This one's a little harder, but not too bad if we just take our time and remember that we do distributive property first. So we're going to do the multiplication first before we add and subtract. So I'm going to circle the 3 to remind me to distribute the positive sign to the numbers. So it means 3 times 4 and positive 3 times negative 2x. So 3 times 4 gives us positive 12, so I'll put plus 12 there. And 3 times negative 2x gives us negative 6x. So I'll put minus 6x. You should never have double signs when you're doing this. So just think positive 3 times negative 2 is negative 6x. Now just bring down whatever you didn't distribute. So the negative 6x comes down, and the plus x comes down. So we did distributive property. Now we're going to combine our like terms by adding and subtracting. So I'm going to box and circle. So if I box the negative 6x, what would I box with that? Negative 6x and plus x. And then plus 12 is just hanging out by itself. All right, now combining our like terms, think negative 6x, we'll get the sign in front of it, minus 6x, that's negative 12x. And this is really a 1x, it's understood. So negative 12 plus 1 gives us negative 11. So we have negative 11x, and that marked off all 3 of these terms. And then I just bring down my plus 12, and I'm done. And remember, when we simplify, it's okay that we didn't find out what x is. That's only when we solve, when we have an equation. So that's just your final answer. All right, I would like to do a trickier one. And this is when you have a negative sign in front of a parentheses. So here's what I mean. Let's say you had 7 minus parentheses 2x plus 6 minus x. Alright, now this minus sign, you can really slip in a -1. So just make a note there that a minus, that we can always make that a -1. So we would use a -1 there. So just plug in the 1, and we're going to distribute the -1 to both of these. And I draw those arrows just so that you remember that you're multiplying it to both terms. So it's -1 times 2x, which is -2x, -1 times 6, which is -6. And now we just bring down what didn't cancel, or what didn't distribute, so the 7 and the -x. And remember, what is in front of my x? What's my coefficient? It's really a -1. So if you don't have a number there, you can always multiply it by 1. Because that does not change its value, right? That's the identity property. That's right, they're identical. So if you multiply by 1, it's still going to be the same thing. They're basically like twins, aren't they? Alright, now let's combine our like terms. So I have 7 I'm going to box, and then -6, and then I'll circle -2x and -1x. So 7 minus 6, that's +1, and -2x minus 1x is -3x. So I get -3x plus 1 for my final answer. And again, what was tricky about that is you didn't have that 1 right here. It was understood that that 1 should be there, but it wasn't written there. So basically another way to think about it is that negative sign just changes the sign of the two inside numbers. Alright, next direction is name the coefficients, the like terms, and the constants. And it's for 3y plus 4 minus y plus 2x. I'm just going to write co for coefficients and then write what those are. So my coefficients are the numbers that are in front of the letters. So, because they're the numbers multiplied by the variables. So this is really a 1, it's understood. And then we have a 2. So my coefficients are 3, -1, and +2. Alright, next up I want to write the like terms. So I'll put like and then a colon. In my first like term that I see, I could circle the 3y and the -1y. And that would get a box, that would get maybe a triangle. So the circles get the same thing, the y's get the same thing. So the like terms would be 3y and -y. Those would be like terms. And the 4 and the 2x, they're not in common. They don't have the same last name. And then our last thing we're going to do is constants. So constants, that would be a number that doesn't have a variable. So what's the only number up there without a variable? +4. And that's how you answer questions like that. So remember, coefficients have a number in front of a variable. Like terms have the same last name. And then constants do not have letters, because they're constantly the same. And now that's a wrap.